Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today we're doing the first ever episode of Let's Talk About Mazda. Now this is just going to be sort of a trial run, a pilot if you will, and basically what it is I'm going to kind of show you guys my idea and see if you guys like it. So before I lose your guys' attention, if you're not into podcasts or not into videos like this, that's totally fine. What streaming services do you guys use for listening to podcasts? I can't do these headphones. So if you guys are into watching podcasts or listening to podcasts, let me know how you view those, because I want to put out an audio portion of this podcast. So I don't know if that's Spotify. I have experience with SoundCloud, and I know I listen to some podcasts on iTunes, but I'm not sure where else you guys stream your podcast. So let me know down below, because I would like to make an audio version of this. So Let's Talk About Mazda is an idea I've had since last year, probably last December. And the original concept was to basically interview someone, do like a one-on-one chat where they drive me around in their Mazda, and then we talk about Mazda and that sort of thing, thus the name Let's Talk About Mazda. Well, I sort of got to thinking that that's probably going to create a lot of issues driving around in cars. We might try it later, but since a lot of people's cars are straight piped, and that just straight up uses a lot of gas, and right now I don't really have the money to pay for everyone's gas, so it would be out of the owner's pocket, which is completely unfair to them. So I've decided to make it all out of my pocket, which would be the recording equipment. I come to them and that sort of thing. That's why this will probably be the only podcast in this basement, and this will also be the only podcast where it's just me. So the plan with this is basically, I'm really interested in the community. The Rotary community, the Mazda community is unique. It's very tight-knit. Everyone kind of knows everyone in the Chicagoland area. If you're big into Rotaries, you know a lot of other people who are big into Rotaries. Sure, you get people every once in a while, like a teenager that watches Initial D that buys an FC and then sells it in a month. We don't really know those people. But if you're into Rotaries, if you're hardcore about Rotaries, odds are you know a lot of the people. And that's what I've been kind of doing this last year, is I've gotten a lot of names, a lot of phone numbers, a lot of emails, of people in the community, and so now I kind of want to share that. I want to showcase that, and that's what this is the idea that I've come up with. So what I want to do is then every episode I'll go somewhere else. That's why I'm filming with a GoPro, because I'm going to be filming with a GoPro in the future, because I have the most GoPros, so I can do a couple different angles. I only have one nice DSLR camera, and I don't want to switch between fisheye and not fisheye. I think it's too jarring. I'm fine with fisheye. I'm fine with not fisheye. I just don't want to do that switch. So that's why I'm filming with a GoPro now. So if you're watching the playlist of Let's Talk About Mazda, then it's not going to be jarring to kind of switch between that stuff. So, like I said, I want to make this a traveling podcast, so hopefully I'll get some other people on the podcast and we'll talk about stuff, and I'll go to them. I want to talk to the guys at Red Mist, especially Mike, since he has 3 RX-7s and he has a lot of experience there. I want to go there and talk to him, do a video in their shop. That'd be really cool. As you guys know, Caleb Gingium, I'm sure I'll get him on here at some point. We've been talking about this for a while, actually. The guys out in Washington, Atkins Rotary, I'd love to film a podcast with them, and of course we'll film it actually out in Washington, so that'll be really cool, which I might be taking a trip out there in June-ish to the West Coast to see Atkins, but that's still up in the air. Still have to figure everything out with that, but that's basically the idea of this, is just to show the people's stories of the community, and showcase not only their cars but their stories and how they got into Rotaries and why they like Rotaries, or why they like. I'll talk to people with Miatas, because Miatas and RX-7s are really the same besides the engine. And Miatas obviously have a cult following too, so that'll be a lot of fun to do that. So this pilot episode, this is, like I said, just to get the idea out there, see what you guys like, see what you guys dislike, and see how you guys stream, because I will be releasing the audio version of this. But so I figured we'll start off with my story. So then whenever we go out and interview people, talk to people, we focus on their stories, and you don't have to wonder about what my story is. So let's start off. I don't even know where to begin. I guess really my start with Mazda was when I learned how to drive stick shift. Really, the first time I drove stick was I was 15. I had my learner's permit, and it was in my high school's parking lot. But it's the same car I actually ended up learning on. It's a 2007 Mazda Speed 3. And if you're watching the video portion, I'll show a picture here. That was a very fun car to drive, and I wish the owner actually sold it before I actually really got good at it. But that was the first stick shift car I drove, and that was really my intro to Mazda, was this 07 Speed 3. And those things are actually pretty quick. I really enjoyed that car for, how I could drive it. A first-time stick shift driver, everyone's terrible. I stalled the car a million times. I actually stalled it twice in front of a cop, and the car was straight pipe, so I'd have to start it up each time. And it was quite loud, but I was so nervous because I didn't want to get pulled over for a ticket. And so that was really my intro. I'd seen Miatas before and stuff, but nothing too crazy. Mouth is really itchy. But so that was my intro, and then I never really thought about it. I always thought that was a cool car. My brother would drive that car. It was our neighbor's, and he'd let us borrow it. And so we'd take it to car meets, and we felt really cool. Going to car meets in a Speed 3, it sounded really good. We would play the Tokyo Drift theme song whenever we'd go to Supercar Saturday, which is so cringy at this point. But that's what we did, and that was how we felt cool in high school, was through cars. And so once I was about to turn 18 the summer before, I was like, okay, you know what? I have some cash, and I want to buy my own car. I want to have my car, And so my dad, back in the late 80s, had a 1980 RX-7, an SA, and I'd always seen pictures of it when I was a kid. I remember when we saw Fast and Furious originally, he said that he had an RX-7, a red one too, like Dom's, although that's obviously a third gen. But he showed me pictures of that, and I was back and forth. I was like, that'd be really cool, but I don't really know about that, and I want to drive my friends around, so I wanted a 4-door. I was looking at Subaru Foresters, BMW E46s, Infiniti G35s, that whole thing. But my friend Nick Sander, shout out to Nick Sander, actually texted me one night out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, I just feel like you really need to get an RX-7." And so I was like, okay. So I started looking at them on Craigslist, checked out two of them, and it was a 79 leather sport, or maybe it was an 80 leather sport. It was black with gold wheels. It was the factory waffles, but they were gold. It was just part of the leather sport package, I guess. And then I checked out a maroon one, which had like a lightweight flywheel, different, I think it was a Holley carburetor. It was on decently slick tires, which at the time I was like racing slicks, but looking back on it, they're not that slick. And I was like, okay, this is the car that I want. It was really fun to drive. I think I ended up doing 90 miles an hour in these back roads. The guy just kept telling me to rip it, and I did. And so then a couple weeks later, I was sitting in class. I was a senior in high school, and I saw one on Craigslist for $3,000. And I texted the guy. I said, "Hey, I have $2,500. I will pick this car up this weekend if you can match that price." And he said, okay. So actually, I was at church. I was leading a Bible study for junior high. I had agreed to do this every Sunday my senior year. And so my dad went out for me. And he texted me pictures. He said he drove it, and I trusted my dad's word. He said it's a really good car. If you wanna buy it, let's go for it. And so I decided then and there. I was like, all right, you have my money. Go ahead and buy it. I always hate telling that story because I feel like people are like, oh, your dad bought your car for you. No, it was with my money. My parents have have paid very little into my car. They originally paid for a clutch replacement because I didn't have the money at the time. But other than that, it's been on me. But anyway, and so they brought it home, and I got it registered later that week. I would drive it around my court every day before it was registered. And then first place I ever drove it to was the Delta Sonic Car Wash. That's where I was working at the time. And I think you guys pretty much know the story from there. I'll just kind of give a brief spark-noted version. Basically, I was driving to lunch one day, and I was going to go put gas in my RX-7 Apex Seal Blue in the 12A, as what's happens. So that happened in February. So about 6 months later, I bought an FC, a second-gen RX-7, pulled that 13B out with some friends, put it into the FB, then stored it over the winter, didn't get it running, and then last spring, so spring 2017, with the huge help of Adam. Adam will be on this podcast at some point. I guarantee that. Adam and I put the engine in and got it running, and it's been running with the 13B S4 NA since then. So that's where I'm at right now. And if you guys aren't somehow familiar with Rotary life on this channel, you could see the whole story. I filmed literally everything since the day I bought my car till now, and I will continue to film everything until that car either rots out, because it does have some rust. It looks pretty clean, but it does have some rust. So I'll film that car until it rots out, or I roll it over, or whatever, because I don't see myself selling that car. It's my first car, and I've learned so much through that car. So that's really my Rotary story. I've really only had 2 RX-7s, and the other RX-7 I've only had really for like 2 weeks. I drove it for 2 hours from where I bought it to where we pulled the engine, and that was the only time I drove it with that engine. But I did do a little review of it, and there's a lot of video footage of that car on my channel, so if you're interested, you could definitely check that out. But yeah, that's my story. And also, I went on my Instagram, which you guys should follow my Instagram of FBZach. I keep a lot of things up to date on there. So Instagram can be annoying to manage sometimes. So I posted up ask me questions. So I got a couple of them. We'll run through them real quick. This first person asked, what steps should you take when starting a 13B that hasn't run in a few years? Any precautions? Basically, put a 19 mil socket on the end of the engine. Try to spin it over by hand. If it doesn't spin by hand, it's going to be rough. Put a little 2-stroke oil in there, and I mean, other than that, just start it like a regular engine. It's not that crazy. Ever going to port it? I would love to port my car. I'd love to do like a street port or bridge port, but I think what I'm going to do, I'm playing with the idea of getting another engine like an S5, building it outside of the car, doing the port, maybe a turbo, and then when I'm fully ready and I have everything, then we'll do the swap decently quick. Because the last swap took a couple months, and that was just because I had to keep gathering parts and figuring it out as I went and that sort of thing. Why do you think they didn't make as many RX-7s as they did Miatas? I think the Miata's more accessible to people. It's a lot less scary than the Rotary. It's a lot safer bet. I think that's really the reason. And then top 3 mods. From what I've heard, I don't have any personal experience with it, but from what I've heard, a lightweight flywheel does work on the Rotary engine. Definitely a cooling system. Even right now, I'm having slight overheating issues with my car, but definitely work on the cooling system because that's huge on a Rotary. And then headers, get that higher flow. Rotary engines don't need as much back pressure as piston engines do. So Rotaries hate back pressure. So that's the top 3 mods that I would do. 2 of which I've done. 1 of which I have not. I have not done a lightweight flywheel yet. But yeah, we're sitting right about at 15 minutes here. We're coming up on 15 minutes. These podcasts will definitely be longer. I don't expect this one to be really long, mainly because it's just me. And like I said, that won't happen again. I definitely will be interviewing someone. So let me know also down below who you'd like to see interviewed, who you'd like to see on the show. Obviously, there are limitations on who can be on the show based on if I can get a hold of them, and I don't think Obama would want to do my podcast. The other thing is that a lot of people did say they were worried about me doing a Mazda only podcast to kind of limit myself. I do want to do a regular podcast, just a cars, talk about anything, blabber on sort of podcast. It's just this was kind of my first idea, and I kind of want to feel this one out. I also want to get used to doing podcasts. I want to get used to I want to get the hang of it. I know I'm not very good at it at this point, but I'd like to get better. I need to get better headphones because talking with that was weird. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this inaugural episode of Let's Talk Mazda. Definitely let me know who you want to see on here. This will be the only solo one that I do. But yeah, that's... Oh, I was actually going to talk about... actually recent development that they've announced that Mazda is going to be making Eevee cars with a rotary range extender. Excuse me. Which I think is really interesting. It's cool that they're going to bring back the rotary sort of. And my whole thing, if you guys saw my 4th gen Miata review, my whole thing about the rotary is that the rotary doesn't adapt, it doesn't change, it doesn't give a crap about what you think. The rotary works its way. It uses oil, that's it. So it's interesting that they're going to try to put the rotary in with such new technology. But other than that, I'm excited to see the EVs with a rotary in them. And I really can't wait until the first person bridge ports their range extender, because that will be hilarious and awesome. And I wonder if you can somehow make the car run off of that. I believe it's just a generator, so I don't think so. But if it were a hybrid, that would be pretty neat. But I think it's just a generator. So a little bit of news. We'll talk about whatever's happening at the time of the podcast. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this first inaugural episode. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you like the format. I think we'll do 2 cameras, at least 2 or 3 when I do bigger interviews. But since it's just me, there's no sense in changing any different angles. So, again, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.
There goes a sight from